Guess who's joining us now? Number one Democratic consultant of all time in the history of the Republic. He's with us now. He's got this all figured out. He was at a Tom Perriello tweet storm last night. Or no, he was the tweet storm. And that is Ben Tribbett. Now, you can follow Ben at Not Larry Sabato. Now, there was a time when he had the number one blog in Virginia, but he since said, take a little hiatus on that. But he's going to be breaking all this down. Got a new Washington Post poll out on the governor's races, and we're going to get this all broken down by none other than Ben Tribbett joining us now. Ben, how you doing, man?
Good morning, John.
Sorry about your caps.
Yeah, whatever.
Just want to say I'm sorry. I was rooting for them. I have no dog in the hunt, but I know you're a big fan. And I was pulling for you, babe. I really was. And I'm sorry. But there's always, next season. But the Nationals, they're doing good. We're still going to get that Nationals, Astros, World Series. You, I, and Chap, we're going to be there. I know we are. Right there in National Stadium on the World Series. All three of us taking a picture. It's going to be fun.
That'll be awesome.
So you can look forward to that. Okay. Ben, let's forget hockey. Hockey season's over. Let's get to this Washington Post poll. Ben, now you predicted this. You said on my show 2 weeks ago, if the next poll comes out, shows Perriello ahead, all hell's going to break loose in the Northam campaign. People are going to be bailing right and left. Poll out, Perriello ahead. Washington Post poll, couple weeks out. I have no idea what the Northam campaign message is. I have no idea what they're doing. I think they're going to lose because they're telling me they're going to win because everybody stays home. Not a good strategy in my book. How do you see this whole thing?
Well, I think that, at this point, Northam's best path to victory is basically what you just articulated, which is a lower turnout. He does very well among seniors, which seniors are the biggest chunk of the electorate. The lower the turnout, the bigger chunk of the electorate that they represent. That's not a great strategy to win. I was looking at through my stuff, John, and came across some mail that I'd kept from 2013 when we had our last primary with Ralph Northam in it. And, I was re-looking at some of the mail he sent out, and Ralph was very compelling. He did a very nice job presenting himself as a sort of a fresh face and a doctor and someone who could, break through some of the gridlock in Richmond. I've yet to get any, and I'm a primary voter that, has voted in every primary for the last 20 years. I've yet to get anything in my mailbox from Ralph Northam's campaign. When he pops up to Northern Virginia or he's in this neck of the woods, the word never seems to get out about it, so that you can attend. I've gone to 3 Perriello town halls to cover them and live tweeted. I haven't been able to do a Northam one because the word doesn't seem to spread, or it's just there's something that's not clicking right now. And with 3 weeks to go, they're running out of time to get this together to make it click. Ralph has every advantage in the book. I mean, he has all these endorsements from every state senator, every state delegate, local officials. Yet, are any of them doing anything for him?
No.
Are we seeing? Is Ralph mobilized any of these?
Nope. I travel the state. I've seen nothing in Hampton Roads. Anything tangible, I haven't seen it. I've seen nothing in Richmond. I've seen nothing. I don't know if they're doing something. It's awfully stealth because I got to tell you, that's why I don't think he's going to win. And, last time I was all over it. I said he was going to beat Chopra, as you know, and I know that Chap was recreating a history because I was the only one that's saying he was going to win, but I did the same thing. I mean, I voted in Democratic primaries in the past. I'd gotten a mailer from him, which means he was extending out beyond, the people that vote in every one. I've seen nothing. I don't know what they're doing. I think it's like they're trying to run out the clock or hope nobody shows up or there's no coverage of it. Or, I mean, I tell you, when you're the sitting lieutenant governor and you've been there for a term and you're in the state Senate and you got these great credentials and you're a VMI guy and everybody loves you and you're a neurosurgeon doctor and you got all these patients and you run this campaign hoping that everybody stays home, it's crazy, crazy campaign.
Yeah, you know, it is crazy, and the piece of it I don't understand, Johnny, is like you take like the endorsements that he's gotten, for example. It's not that hard to put people, send out something to voters that announce, I've been endorsed, in Arlington by, the 3 delegates, the 2 senators, the 5 county board, whatever, going through the list and let people know that. But he's not done that. And then it sort of raises a question to me of, so why did they put so much work at the start of the campaign into getting all these endorsements if they're not going to use them? Right? Like that's the thing that just, it totally flummoxes me of, you got a great advantage in terms of having those endorsements, but it doesn't give you any advantage if you don't use them. So, I think that in a lot of ways, the Northam campaign is sort of obsessed with Tom Perriello. Should be obsessed with themselves. And how do we get, the tools that we have, and how do we use those tools?
Right.
And instead, they're sort of obsessed with Tom Perriello, and it's definitely trending in a way that makes you feel like, the Northam campaign is the one that has to make a change in the next 3 weeks in order to win this thing.
I couldn't agree more. You summed it up very succinctly. They're not using the tools they have. They kept telling us to wait. We waited. You're right. They're obsessed with the Perriello campaign. 3 weeks out, they still don't know how the heck to deal with the guy. And that's why they're going to lose, and you're going to have to blame this defeat, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, at the heels of their consultants who have somehow taken charge of this guy's campaign. He is a VMI graduate, a veteran. He wins the primary. He's governor. If you look at the Washington Post polls, and he's basically let a group of consultants who's ever he's hired take him down. And I think it's a shame, but it is what it is, and he's going to lose. I don't think they can turn this in 3 weeks, Ben. I really don't. I don't see it.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say the race is over, but it has a vibe to it of, Ralph basically sort of is at the same number that he was at 3 months ago.
Right. There's no growth.
He's been on television, and I've seen some TV ads. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen any mail. I haven't gotten any volunteer calls. I haven't gotten anything like that. But, he has been on television. And obviously there's been a lot of press coverage of the race. But it's not moving.
Right.
Now, usually if it's not moving, you would say the candidate's not compelling. I think Ralph Northam's plenty compelling. I think there's plenty of things that he can sell on. I don't think that the problem is Ralph Northam. I think the problem is that they're not doing anything to sell who he is. And the other piece of this is that somehow in the realm of making a primary strategy, Ralph Northam's turned into this progressive warrior for his entire life who is perfect on all of the issues. And I don't think that that's a realistic way of approaching this primary and making him as compelling as is. You look in Northern Virginia, and one of the things that voters look for in Northern Virginia is electability. You can see that people think of Northern Virginia being this very, very liberal spot, mm-hmm. but voters cast their ballots very, very strategically. It's not like it's in a Berkeley.
Right.
And when they cast those sort of strategic votes for a primary, whether it's Jim Webb over Harris Miller or Cree Deeds over Ryan Moran, correctly or not, they're trying to vote for people that can win statewide. And I think that when the Northam campaign has tried to just run to the left here and attack Perriello, I think they're making Perriello look electable, and they're losing out on some of these electability voters, which should be Ralph Northam's number one base in the state, having been lieutenant governor, a moderate state senator, VMI grad, Eastern Shore. He should be winning these voters that are focused on electability. But he's not, because they're so obsessed with making him into somebody that he's not,
right,
and then obsessed with Tom Perriello,
right,
that I feel like he's not getting the voters that are his own base.
Yep.
And
I agree. I think you're spot on. I wouldn't change a word. I think you have instinctively, and what you've seen, you've summed it up. And look, we had this conversation. This is the third conversation that we've had, and you kept saying to me, I'm waiting, and you're still waiting, and you get nothing, and he's not moving the needle, and he's going to lose. Tom Perriello's got all the momentum, all the enthusiasm, all the growth, and, banking in today's world, when you're banking on endorsements from people, and I'm endorsed by this person and that person in today's environment, and they're doing nothing. I mean, what are they doing? I mean, you look at, the Richmond area. What are they doing? I don't see anything. I don't see a darn thing for them. So I don't know what they're doing. I mean, what's Saslow out there in Northern Virginia knocking on doors? I don't see that. So, look, I think you're spot on there. Now, you were at Tom Perriello's town hall meeting yesterday, live tweeting. I got to see some of it. Looked pretty lively. Give us your take on that.
Well, I've attended 3 of them so far. All 3 times that I've attended, Tom's been within 5 miles of my house, which is really impressive that he's done all these town halls, in this one little area. It shows that he's really targeting outside the Beltway in Northern Virginia, added voters out here. And the town halls that he has are a mix of people that are supporting him and people that are there undecided. I would say last night someone asked a question of, raise your hand if you're undecided, and about half of the room raised their hand. It's hard to imagine that the vast majority of the that are attending are not breaking to him, because he's very impressive. And Ralph Northam's not really having events like that give people that kind of access to him. I think that one of the things that is interesting about the Perriello town halls is it's a much younger crowd than you see at a normal Democratic event. And as someone who, attends a lot of these, many of the activists in the area, very few of the people at any of these town halls have I ever seen before. And I think this is driven by some of the national politics, that there's a lot of people engaging on the Democratic Party side for the first time this year because of what's going on with the Trump administration, and they're following what's going on in D.C. And those voters are all open to all the candidates. People assume that that's Tom Perriello's base. The only reason that it's Tom Perriello's base is because he's made it his base. Those voters didn't all show up out of nowhere and say, I'm going to be for Tom Perriello. But he's attracting them in. He's having these events. I was in California this week, but I was the major dinner that we had in Fairfax County, the Jefferson Obama dinner, is the once-a-year event that the Fairfax Democrats do. And my understanding is that Ralph Northam got an incredible reaction from the crowd, and Tom Perriello did not, and everyone who left there, the activists that are all for Ralph, saying, "Oh, look at Ralph Northam, he did an incredible job," and everyone was for him. That's the same group that attends everything. And when you attend the Perriello events, it's new people and people. And, I'm really waiting for the Northam campaign to get him out there in front of people. And as you said, John, 3 weeks, it's a short amount of time. There is still some time left to allow voters to have some to him. Right now, the only people who know him, it feels like, are the activists and the people that have been attending things for years. And they're great. And by the way, they're very important to have in the campaign if you're using them. But you've got to have additional groups also. Mm-hmm. And I'm having trouble putting my finger on who are the new people that are going to come to this primary judged by Trump that are voting for Ralph Northam, because I'm not sure that the campaign has really accessed that. Now, you said that you think that the Northam campaign, is sort of pushing for low turnout. That's obvious. But even in a low turnout primary where seniors are dominating, new people will participate. And you have to reach them, and you have to get some share of them.
Right,
because if 20% of the voters are new and you don't get very many of them, that wipes out your senior advantage right there.
There it is again. That's why we love having you on. Here's what Ben just said so that everybody can capsulize this, why Perriello is going to win this race, okay? There is absolutely zero effort for Northam going after the new young voters that I can say. Now, they're going to say they do. They don't. It's a lie, all right? Perriello, if he turns them out, what's he going to get? 90% of them? 85%? These new people that you're seeing, I don't know if they're going to turn out on June 13th, but if they do, they're not going to vote for Ralph Northam because they have done nothing to inspire these people. Zero. Zilch. I mean, look at your town hall meeting. You have these meetings. Perriello shows up. I mean, I saw him on a Facebook Live 2 months ago, Saturday. I forget where he was. I have no idea. All I know is he's in there. He's got an open collar, a blue blazer on. He's sitting down. He's at a bar, a lot of people there, and he's taking questions, and he's just engaging. And he's as comfortable as can be. And I said to myself, this guy's going to win. Because he's talking to people, and he's getting other people involved. Everybody he gets involved takes out one of the senior voters that Ralph has. And look, they're trying to be something they're not. He's campaigning to the far left. That's not what he is. I mean, the first Democrat Ralph Northam ever voted for was Ralph Northam. You can't be something you're not in 4 months. I don't know what they're doing with this campaign. I've been saying it for months. You've been saying it. They're going to lose. And they have nobody to blame but themselves, as far as I'm concerned.
John, I want to tell you a little bit more about the town hall last night, too, because I think there were a couple things that really jumped out at me that were interesting. One is Perriello talked about he wanted to, and he didn't cite a specific number, but he talked about having a requirement of energy that we use be locally produced.
Right.
And at first, I was trying to think it through. I hadn't really heard that before from a candidate, and I'm thinking, well, what does that even mean? Mm-hmm. And when he explained it more, he said, obviously, if you're locally producing some amount of energy, that's going to be renewables, and it's an easier sell to make and I'm paraphrasing him here, but essentially it's an easier sell to make in some of the rural conservative areas.
Right.
For locally produced energy than it is to make a sell for renewable energy. And I think those are the kind of things in terms of messaging that you get when you have these town halls and you face voters face to face, because you can see what works well. It's the same thing that when you talk to Senator Peterson, and he sort of has a different way of messaging things than many other senators. One of the reasons why is because he knocks on so many doors in Virginia that he sees it works.
Right.
And when he's talking to people, he's able to test it out and sort of refine his own message. I think Hillary said it once in a speech, after she won the New Hampshire primary in 2008, that, all the town hall meetings she had there had helped her find her own voice. And there is something to be said for that with politicians, where the more that you interact with average voters in a period of time, it helps you keen down your message. You can do all the polling and message testing that you want, and you can have your staff write up your talking points, but you really have to face people face-to-face in order to refine down your message to see what really works and what doesn't. And when you listen to Perriello at his calls, what sounds like the same talking points that you might get in a normal candidate, when you listen carefully, he talks in a different way. He has the message comes at it in a little bit different direction. And if I were Ed Gillespie, I would not debate Tom Perriello in the fall. I'd be trying to avoid it. I think Ralph Northam would do very well in the debates as well. But when you look at Gillespie versus Perriello, Perriello really has a message down that's going to appeal across the state. He's not a Democratic candidate that's going to just appeal in the urban crescent. So that is the recipe for a massive landslide victory for the Democrats this year. And John, I've been predicting that all year long.
Yes.
That the trends all say this is going to be a big year for the Democrats.
Yes.
And I really think that we're headed in that direction for a pretty major landslide. And the question is, whether it's Tom Perriello or Ralph Northam, who's going to be able to harness that energy in order to help it go down ballot as well? Because this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity for the House of Delegates to really change the way that Virginia looks and governs.
You're right. You look at the Washington Post poll, Perriello's up by 13, Northam up by 12 over Ed Gillespie, who is the undisputed front runner likely to be the nominee. You look at the trend you mentioned, could turn into a blowout. But I also think Perriello is a much tougher candidate in the fall for Ed Gillespie than Ralph Northam would be. Both are going to be the favorite. But Perriello was getting better on the campaign trail. Ralph is getting worse. That's the way I see it. This has got to be the worst campaign run in history. And I've been saying for months they need to shake it up. They haven't done that. I don't know where Clark Mercer is. It's too late. They got 3 weeks to go. Ben, they're going to lose. Let's get to the Republican side. How does Gillespie not be the nominee?
Well, I think Gillespie has the nomination just about sewn up, and I think that the same applies to the lieutenant governor's race. I mean, this has been a year where Republicans have really gone to the establishment and don't have that itch they seemed to have last year to upset the apple cart. It seems like most Republicans are happy having, very establishment candidates as their nominees this year.
So you think Ed's going to be the nominee for governor, right? I think we agree on that. I don't think it's going to be close. He might get over 50%. Who do you think is going to finish second, Wagner or Stewart?
John, I would guess Corey Stewart, just because I think that Stewart has gotten more press attention in this race than Wagner has. Wagner hasn't really gotten much attention, and so it's hard to beat that when you have two basically unknown candidates statewide, and Stewart has a little bit of name ID. Stewart's also the easy person to vote for if you're trying to cast a protest vote against Ed Gillespie. For those conservatives that are upset that he's going to be the candidate, Stewart's an easy person to cast that protest vote for. But it's really not that competitive of a race. I think Stewart could have made it in a more competitive race, but he got sidetracked with some of this sort of goofy stuff rather than focusing in on issues where I think there were some vulnerabilities for Ed in the primary electorate, but Stewart was so focused on the goofy stuff that he got away from his core message, which was, the establishment Ed message. And that's a message that could have resonated if Stewart had stuck to it, but he failed to do it.
I agree with that. I don't know who's going to finish second. Maybe Stewart, maybe Wagner. I think Wagner's going to do a little better than meets the eye, but it doesn't matter. I think Ed is going to be the nominee. It's not going to be close. Let's get to the down ballot. Lieutenant Governor, 3 candidates, Senator Joe Vogel, Senator Bryce Reeves, Senator Glenn Davis. I've now got Vogel moving into prohibitive favorite status. Not quite 1 to 10, but I've got her at 3 to 5. I really don't see the Reeves campaign where they're going. And I guess Davis could pull an upset, but I don't see how he gets the votes in Northern Virginia to do that.
Yeah, I think the Vogel story has been one of the most interesting stories of the year, right? Because you would think that the whole email thing with Bryce Reeves would have taken both of them down because of the ugliness back and forth. But it actually seems to have really helped Jill Vogel. It actually rallied people to her that felt she was under attack unfairly. I mean, it just you could write a book about at the end of this campaign about how mishandled that whole situation was by the Reeves campaign and how much they overplayed their hand. A hand, by the way, which if some of the things they've released are true, that they had an opportunity there to really finish Jill, because obviously those allegations are terrible if they were true. And instead, they did it in such a ham-handed way that it left Jill, the prohibitive frontrunner. And I remember when we talked about this a couple months ago, John, and this was first happening, we were both speculating, well, will this give an opening to Glenn Davis because they're going to blow each other up? Well, it turned out that Bryce Reeves, if he was running a suicide bombing mission, he only got himself. He didn't get anybody else.
I was just picturing that analogy in my mind. It pretty much is that way. Look, I think Glenn Davis has got a shot, so I'm not going to write this thing off the way. I mean, I just don't think Ed Gillespie is not going to be the nominee. Would I be shocked on Election Day if Glenn Davis pulled an upset? No. I think it's a long shot, but I wouldn't fall out of my chair. If Stewart won, I would fall out of my chair, no question. But Davis has run a very good race, and I'll say this about Glenn Davis. I think he set himself up for something in the future, win or lose. I think he's ran a really good race. People like him. I mean, I was at a couple of events for him in the last couple of weeks, and people meet him, and they just like the guy, and that's tough to do in the environment we're in. So I think he's got a good message, and I think he's going to do much better than meets the eye. But Vogel's a clear favorite. She's up on TV now. Have you seen her TV, Ed?
I've not seen the Vogel TV ads.
Yeah, I just saw them. I saw 2 last night at Hampton Roads, and I saw a couple over the weekend. Very effective. She's at home cooking breakfast with her family there as she's talking and cooking eggs, and is a very effective ad. It's the whole mom thing, and then she talks about taxes and regulations and stuff. But I think the way the ad was put together was highly effective. I think she is going to win. I don't know where Reeves goes from here because, like you said, it's a suicide mission, but he didn't take anybody out.
Yeah, really, I can't figure out, we talked about this a few months ago, John, but I can't figure out what Reeves was thinking other than he got more obsessed with the potential lawsuit that comes from this email, and perhaps, look, if he can prove it in court that it came from them, he's going to make some money off of that. And it's almost as if he became more obsessed with that than he was his own campaign and his own political future.
Yeah, very, very weird. I don't see, where on the other hand, if you look at the Wagner race and you talk about their political future, when this is over, win or lose, Frank Wagner is still chairman of Commerce and Energy in the Senate. He's still one of the most powerful members of the Senate. Can't get anything done without him. I don't care who wins. You got to go through Wagner. And he's run a pretty good race for Frank Wagner, so I think he's got opportunity in the future. Reeves, I just don't know where he goes. I know he got into this thing. He really wanted to be a statewide candidate. I thought he saw himself as being governor. A third place finish, which I think he's heading to. I don't know where he goes from there, Ben, politically. How about you?
I agree. And John, one of the things that can be a real challenge for politicians is when you've been involved in a hotly contested key race, and the whole world comes in behind you because you're your party's nominee in this important race. And in Bryce's case, he was the nominee that turned control of the Senate in 2011. You mistake the fact that the whole world rallied behind you in that race for that the whole world will rally behind you in the future in some other race. And I see this time and time again with candidates where when the expectations are a little bit lower, whether it be Glenn Davis or Jill Vogel, and they're running a major race for the first time, they're able to run better campaigns than someone like Bryce, who I guess the way I'd sum it up, John, is there's an expectation from Bryce that people will support him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's sort of I guess I'd call it a pouting type of attitude when they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't play well. It doesn't look good. And maybe he doesn't recognize that people can see it. But even watching it from the Democratic side, it's like you sort of watch Bryce Reeves and you're like, oh, gross. Where, Jill Vogel, you disagree with her on issues, but she has a way about her that is, looks like a statewide candidate, and she behaves like a statewide candidate. And you can see her in the role as lieutenant governor. And in Bryce Reeves' case, you think, wow, if he's a lieutenant governor, he just spent the whole 4 years trying to get back at, people that he felt slighted him. And that's the vibe that Bryce gives out. It may not be what he's intending to give out, but that's the vibe people get.
Yeah, it is the vibe. And, an example is him not coming on my radio show. And I've never had a cross word with him. So I don't know what he's mad at. I've asked him on, 20 times. They've turned me down every single time. And I have no idea. I guess because they're afraid if he comes on, I'm going to ask him where the lawsuit is that never happened and go down that path. But there's just a lot.
Well, remember when we were in Richmond, John, and we broadcast, I think it was from Senator Stanley's office.
Yes.
And Bryce Reeves and Jill Vogel both came on that morning. This
Yes.
was this is a year ago, 2 years ago?
Yes.
And they were both considering runs at that time. And if you remember, I challenged both of them with some tough questions. And Jill smiled and took care of it. And Bryce had a very angry response. And then if you remember after the segment was over, remember how he went out in the hallway and sort of crossed his arms at us and was glaring at us walking by the whole rest of the afternoon? The whole rest of the morning. And we were like, that is so weird. He's got, there's something that's just not right there in the way that he's behaving. And I really feel like, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say this guy isn't like a weirdo, but he does the things that make you watch him and think, there's something wrong with him right now. I don't know if he's just so obsessed with this race that he can't get his mind out of it, but his behavior that morning was like something I have never seen from a statewide candidate before. It was bizarre.
It was not happy and gracious, let me put it that way. Now, part of it, he's a former Army Ranger. He's an ex-narcotic undercover detective. They're a little bit different. I get that. But his demeanor in this race, I don't think has been helpful to him. And we'll see how it plays out. But you're right. In that meeting, you asked him a question, didn't like the question. And rather than just going with the flow and having fun, Jill Vogel did. He got very upset. And, you're running for statewide office. You're going to get questions and things you don't like, and it's just part of it. You can't take this stuff personally, but he did. He got very angry that day, and I don't know. He does hold grudges. He's mad at me. I have no idea why. I honestly, if you offer me $1,000, I couldn't tell you why. I have no earthly idea what I did. Normally, I know when people are mad at me. Let's get
right.
Normally I know. Not always at home. Sometimes the Freudian gets mad at me just because I am who I am. But normally I got an idea what I did. In this case with Reeves, I have no idea. And I asked Ann Reeves at a function I was at why he was mad at me, and she couldn't tell me either. So I have no earthly idea. All right, let's get to Democrat Lieutenant Governor. Look, Justin Fairfax is going to win this race. Come on. In fact, I think he's going to win it handily. I think it's going to be Perriello Fairfax. What about you?
Well, John, I'm seeing, a lot of people that have no idea there is a lieutenant governor's primary. So I'm going to stick with what I've been saying to you the entire race, which is this is a campaign that's going to be won in the last week because no one's even aware that it's going on. So I don't know how you can say that Justin Fairfax is doing well, or if you told me Susan Platt or Gene Rossi were doing well. Nobody knows the race is even going on. None of them have communicated. None of them have gotten out past the activists because they don't have the resources to do that. So people are going to make a split decision on this. Now, I was actually in a Starbucks last week, and I'll tell you a story about a voter I encountered.
Go ahead.
Because I think it speaks very much to where this lieutenant governor's race is going to head, which is identity politics. This woman was sitting there. She had an I voted sticker on. She was talking to her friend. She actually had voted for Ralph Northam. And I overheard her talking about how she had voted that day, saw the sticker. So I sort of moseyed over there and said, excuse me, I hope you don't mind me asking, who did you vote for lieutenant governor? And she said, I can't remember her name. And I thought that pretty much encapsulated how this primary is going. Now, obviously, she voted for Susan Platt because she couldn't remember her name. But that's where this lieutenant governor's race is right now. People that voted don't even remember the name of the person they voted for. So this thing is as wide open as it could be. I think that, where we had the lieutenant governor and attorney general primaries last time, and that was all that was on the ballot, people were able to focus on those. There was a lower turnout electorate. The activists mattered. We're going to see a turnout spike here, especially if Cariello does well. We're going to see a bigger spike. These voters do not know who the lieutenant governor options are. Okay? So I don't know how anyone could accurately predict what's going to happen in this thing. I think it's completely wide open and could go either way.
I can't remember her name, so she voted for the woman on the ballot.
That's right.
Not knowing any of the candidates, she voted for the female.
She said, I can't remember her name.
Does not bode well.
I
mean, it bodes very well for Susan Swecker. I mean, that was her kind of strategy going in, I think. And, she's based her campaign on the Trump resistance. I mean, I just question that strategy. I mean, I have no idea what policy she has. That's anything I get from her.
Well, remember, too, John, that in the last week, as people start to tune into this, there'll be some voter guides that go in the newspapers.
Right.
And, voters will take a quick 10-second look at the lieutenant governor's race once they decide on the governors. And, you look at what that will say and what information will they get very quickly. And in 10 seconds or less, you'll get from Justin Fairfax a good-looking former prosecutor. With Gene Rossi, you'll get, a former prosecutor. Sorry, Gene, not as good-looking. And in Susan's case, you're going to get Joe Biden's former chief of staff. That's the 10-second piece of information that when you really quickly look at this race, you're going to get. It's very easy for someone, whether they're voting for Northam or for Cariello, to say, I don't know these candidates. If she was Joe Biden's chief of staff, that's enough of a verifier for me. So I think that the hurdle is a little bit higher for Fairfax and for Rossi in terms of how do they present themselves, because they need to come up with, when these things show up, and this is going to be very critical. If I were on their campaigns, I'd be saying, the most important thing you're doing right now is how you're writing, these questionnaires and these things that are going to show up. People will see in the final week to present yourself as someone to select. And in Justin's case, remember, Justin got a big surge last time because the Washington Post endorsed him when he almost beat Mark Herring. To date, the Washington Post has not made endorsements in this primary. So perhaps Justin will get that endorsement again, and if he does, he'll probably be the favorite in the primary because that will be the 10-second piece of information voters will get that he got a major endorsement from a well-respected newspaper. But barring that endorsement, what is Justin Fairfax's 10-second argument? That, I think, is his biggest hurdle to winning this primary, is Justin comes across better in 5 minutes than he does in 10 seconds. And frankly, I'm not sure voters are willing to give 5 minutes of attention to this primary.
Very good analysis, Ben. You're making me waver. I mean, what you said makes a lot of sense. That's why we have you on and share that. Where Susan Platt, she does have a 10-second moniker, which is, I was Joe Biden's chief of staff.
Right. And that's for voters that don't know all the candidates and don't know much about them. It's easy to cast a vote for someone like that because you look at her and you say, okay, this probably is not someone who's going to embarrass me privately. I think that the hurdle is higher for the other candidates. And I think that Gene Rossi, by the way, has turned out to be this fantastic candidate.
Yes.
If you watch him in person.
Great guy.
But I haven't seen how he's able to break through yet on a statewide level that people will know he's a good guy, that are following they're just not going to pay enough attention. So being a good guy is great. It's better in local elections than it is in statewide elections.
Right. It's too tough for him to get through the noise. I'm out of time. I want to thank Ben Tribbett for being with us. Follow him at Not Larry Sabato. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network.